Ninox.
So, hi, hello everyone, and thanks for joining today's release webinar about 3.14. And I'm very happy to have again Frank here with me, and also today Simon, who is our specialist for e-invoicing. And yeah, I think Frank, the last 3 months went through very fast, right? It's for me, it feels like yesterday we had the last preview webinar.
Absolutely. I think you're right. Yeah, so this is already the fourth release in 2024. So yeah, we are picking up pace here, I would say.
Absolutely. So we are waiting as always for the first minute. So the participant count is already above 100. Let's see if we reach the 200 for this webinar. The release webinars are always the ones with the highest demand, but for now, it's the number is growing slower. So I think we can start. And yeah, I don't want to tell you too much before and hand over directly to Frank. As always, if you have any questions, just post them in the chat or in the F&A section, and then we will answer them in between or at the end of the session. Today we'll have a kind of like a splitted session. In the first part, Frank will speak about the 3.14 release and more about features and functions of 3.14. And in the second part, Simon will dive into the topic of e-invoicing and give a short glimpse about what we will develop and what we'll deliver over the next months.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Tim. Then let me see if I can share my presentation. Is this visible now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, then welcome also from my side. It's great to see this packed audience here in the release webinar from wherever you joined. So greetings from Berlin on this not so beautiful kind of Novemberish, almost Novemberish day, end of October. And yeah, let's take a quick look at what's in the box with our upcoming release 3.14. So basically, we are covering three topics. One of them will be more extensively then shown after my short presentation by Simon. So the first topic, I think, Tim, you announced it already. So we took a lot care about providing basic e-invoicing capabilities on the Ninox platform that involves the creation of e-invoices. It will also include the reading of structured data from e-invoices. So I think e-invoicing is quite a hot topic these days, especially in the European Union, because yeah, some legislation is upcoming. And of course, Ninox will be able to satisfy those demands and help you hopefully to build great solutions that bring additional automation also. So e-invoicing, one of the big topics of 3.14. Then we also further took care about Ninox HR. This is still with an asterisk because at the moment we are focusing with our HR management solution primarily in the German market. So the solution is also very tailored for legislation here within Germany. So every international client I have to postpone a little bit, but of course that will be also very interesting in the future to roll it out to other regions and countries. Nevertheless, so for our German customers, we will now with 3.14 have direct order management in the Ninox platform. That means you can, in a self-service fashion, just order HR licenses if you are already on the Ninox Enterprise plan and assign licenses to individual users in your workspace. And it will be also much more easy to actually get the HR solution up and running. You can directly install it from the template library. So I think huge simplification of the rollout process. And finally, of course, we also bring some general enhancements to the Linux platform. For example, the rich text editor has been worked on a bit, and it has been further improved based on the valuable feedback we got from a lot of customers. We also bring something to the table which I think is interesting for everyone who builds extensive solutions with Linux. So if you have a huge range of field definitions in your table, it will be much more easy to find those fields. So we added a little search box to the table editor, allowing to search fields if you have 20, 50, hundreds within one table definition. And we also enhanced quite dramatically, I think, the dynamic choice fields. So dynamic choice fields will be scriptable. I will show this in a second, what this actually means and what you can make out of it. And another little function that finds its way into the release is a function to extract data from CSV files or CSV strings, basically, with scripting capabilities. As you might know, Ninox always had the option to import data from CSV files in a manual fashion with an extensive import dialog, but now we added also scripting capabilities to ease working with CSV data in automation use cases. And yeah, before I jump into the demo, maybe already a short overlook of our midterm vision on how Ninox will enable e-invoicing use cases. So you see on the left side the things that we are already bringing with this release. So Ninox will be able to process outgoing invoices as well as incoming invoices. And in an e-invoice case, if you're not familiar with it, basically means that there's a representation as usual as a PDF document, but embedded in that document, there's also structured information. And that structured information makes it much more easy to actually automate the creation or the processing of invoices. And in order to support that, we built basic functionality, which Simon will show, but it involves creating a special variant of the PDF format, PDF-A, which is an archivable version of PDF. And it involves, merging basically the structured data, so the head and the line items of invoices with a PDF document, and the other way around to extract from a PDF document that structured information so that you can bring it back to the database structure. And finally, our vision is also integration with accounting software to kind of enrich invoices with additional information, which you can then send over to your accounting system and to make all the finance processes much more easy and automated. So that's the invoicing kind of overview. And now I will jump directly into Ninox, but I have to switch something here in my sharing. 1 second. Oops, can we see the browser now, Tim? Okay, perfect. Thank you
Yes.
very much. So I will start with the parse CSV function. So in this case, I just create a new database completely from scratch, and yeah, let's give it a name like parse CSV. And in that database, I will create a new table. You can already see here the nice search field, but right now it does not make a lot of sense because I have no fields. But oh, let me switch this to English 1 second. Oh, it's actually English. Okay, there we go. So I will create a new table and just call it test CSV. And I will include here a field just to give an example of how a CSV document might look. So I use a multi-line field and call it CSV. And in that, I guess everybody of you has seen in their life a CSV file. So it's a plain text file usually, and it involves usually a header section. We have things like first name, last name. In this case, I'm using a semicolon as a separator, but you can work also with other separators. That's no issue. For example, comma will work just fine. And maybe address. And then we have another line expressing a record of a customer, for example. So let's call it Sarah I'm always short of names. Yeah, so I use Krause, this German name, and I give it some address, Major Street 1, and then there might be another customer called John Doe, and it's in the square 42. So that's our flat file structure. We might have received this from an API endpoint, or we might have received that from an import of a file. So some source of the data. And there's lots of CSV sources on the internet also with quite interesting publicly available data, like all the cities or all the countries in the world and so on. So let's now use our parse CSV function, and works just like that. Yeah, so you call parse CSV and you provide the input data. And I had hoped that I'm on the right version of my system, but oh, I think it's with lowercase. Can someone see the problem? CSV. I have to provide it with options. That was my mistake. Okay, so in this case, I will just provide empty options. That means the function will do all the magic on its own. And here you can already see the result. So we got now structured information. And you can see how this data that was represented just as a string now comes as an array of individual objects. And you see, okay, my first item in that array has obviously the headers here, first name, last name, address. The second item has then the actual data from the first record and so on. So this will make it very easy to work with CSV data, and it will cover basically all the edge cases. I think it even has an auto detection of the separator if you don't provide in the separator, but you can also customize it through the options object in the second argument. Yeah, so if you would state a separator here, for example, it would then assume that separator and so on. Yeah, but if you don't specify anything, it will already work quite nicely out of the box. So that's our little CSV function example here. And now I'm heading towards the scriptable dynamic choice fields. So let's take a look into that. Dynamic choice next gen. So I guess a lot of you guys know the dynamic choice field. So Ninox has, first maybe to illustrate that, a simple type of choice field. So let's call it simple choice. And that's extremely useful. Yeah, you can provide it with a range of options and say, okay, maybe I have a choice of colors like red and green and blue. So that's something you basically define when building the solution. And in many cases, this is just sufficient because you know all the values upfront. But in some cases, you need something that's more flexible. And that's why we have dynamic choices, which you might already also know. So I can create another table and call it colors. And I just give colors a name to make it very easy. And I enter records here like red, green, and blue. And if I go back here to my other table and say here I want to get all the color values choosable by the user, there was and has been for a long time the the dynamic choice field. Yeah, so dynamic, oops, choice, and that would just allow you to basically select my colors And then I would say, okay, I want to have a specific field representing the label of my choice field. And then I go with it. And you see it's almost the same result. So what's the main difference? Those values are not defined during creation of the solution, during build time, but they are actually something that can be altered also during runtime. So some user of your solution might enter something like purple here, and it will just be reflected in the options of this choice field. So this is quite handy, but we identified there are many situations where this additional table can be either a burden or not really necessary, or where you want something that's much more flexible. And now we have the option to implement choice fields that actually work completely dynamic. I will call this scripted choice. Yeah, so it's the same field type. It's the dynamic choice field. Oops. And script the choice. And it's the same field type. But in this case, I will not use a select statement to gather the values from another table, but I will just write them here. Let's say script, or it's in the first iteration here, it's a very static definition. I will just put ID1, caption red, ID2, caption green, and ID4, caption blue. Yeah, so let's see if this works. It actually does work. So what's the benefit? Well, it might not be so obvious in this version because it's almost the same as this here. But if you consider creating a template solution, you could later add maybe additional options without having to alter the user schema and so on. So this already has some value. But now I will move to something more advanced, and let's just put another one. Next, I call it next scan choice. And in this case, let's assume I want to display all the months of a certain year. Yeah, so maybe I have a certain year, and that will be just this year, so 2024. And now I want to render out choices of all the months in that year. Of course, I could just statically define that, but maybe that value changes over time. So I really want to make it smart and use a script function to define the months. So what I can do is I use a for loop. So, and I will say, we go from 1 to 13. That's why 13? Because the for loop will, in this version, will always go from 1 to the value that's smaller than 13. Yeah, so you always have to add mentally 1 as the maximum you don't want to achieve. And this for loop will now generate date values, and in the date value, we will provide the year, so that's static. But as the months, we will take the I, so our index, and we will take the first day of that month. Yeah, so let's see if this works. It won't work because I need to provide a certain information in a certain way to my dynamic choice field. Yeah, so I always want to have an ID and a caption. So my ID in this case will be I. Yeah, so the index of the month, and my caption will be a text representation of the date. Yeah, so I construct the date with the given year, the months from my loop. So it will be 1, 2, 3, until 12, and day 1. And I want to convert that date into a string representation. Yeah, so I can do it with just text, or I can also do something like format, and then maybe some representation you like. For example, year minus months, and you don't need the day. Okay, let's see if this works. And you see, it actually generates those values from a script. And of course, that works with all the representations of that field. Yeah, so if you don't want to see it as a combo box, but you want to see radio buttons, or if you want to have like this switch-based variant, or oops, I clicked a little bit too much, and Zoom is getting here a little bit in my way. There we go. So all those representations of the choice field will work, and I think there's a lot of potential for that feature. Yeah? So I can't wait to see what you guys make out of it, because I think there are many, many use cases where this is highly useful. With that, I'm already done, and I will hand over to Simon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. So I'll try to share my screen as well. I hope everybody can see what I'm seeing.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll try to provide a preview today of what the actual implementation of the e-invoicing functionalities we built will look like. And also by that, also provide a preview of the template we will release in the beginning of December. So the actual use case of e-invoicing is pretty clear to most of us. It's about receiving and creating invoices, as we all do right now. The new thing is that it is structured data, and that this comes with a lot of automation, and also by that with a lot of legal requirements and formal requirements for the standard used. So we'll start with the first legal requirement by 2025, which is receiving e-invoices. So we have a fictional company here that not only has revenue, but also, of course, has expenses. And now we're going to enter one of the invoices we got. So, of course, this can also be automated via an email input, but we'll do it right now manually. We are able to receive ZUGFeRD and FactorX invoices, which is the XML and PDF combined format Frank had mentioned earlier. And we are also able to receive just pure XML invoices, which is the XRechnung. So I'll start with the combined one. I'll just drag it into here. So what happens is the e-invoice is sent to the Mustang server. The XML is read out, and all the information is then mapped into the corresponding fields in our solution. So this information now, in comparison to what we had before, like OCR or manual input, is that the information provided by the XRechnung and the server is reliable. So we can get rid of a lot of manual labor at that part, and also easily build automation upon that. So in this case, quite small automation is that we check if it is the right recipient, which in this case would be us. So and now we see there's something wrong, and we can go and check out what this might be. In this case, it's quite easy. The recipient, so the company name, is not in the right format. So there should be a space between buzzing and business. This is something we could ignore, or we can then push for being sent another invoice, a corrected one. So the same can be done here with the recipient, with the issuer, if there's anything wrong on their side or on our side. For right now, we can create a profile so that we had not, so it's, we already had the profile, so we can check, and we then can have a look at what happened here, why the information is not correct. In this case, it seems they have moved. So we should correct this information on our side and recheck. So if everything then is all right, we can accept the invoice as we have before. So also provided by the Mustang server and the functionalities we implemented is access to the complete information given in the invoice. So which, of course, can exceed the information we show, because the standard holds a lot of additional fields that can bring value, but not necessarily have to be implemented. So, and in here, you get all the information that is contained within the invoice, which then, of course, has to be adapted to the individual solution this is used. So back to the invoice and back to the dashboard. We now have other expenses, and we could have a look into what actually happens. So when it comes to scripting, the communication with the Mustang server to which we send the invoice we received is done by utilizing the send command function, which already existed in Ninox, yet for another purpose. So via this command, you can perform different actions with the Mustang endpoint, which is extract an XML from a combined invoice, parse the information from the invoice, or get an HTML view, as I've shown, from the invoice XML, the information inside the invoice. So what you get in return from the Mustang endpoint is a JSON, which you then have to map to the individual fields. Yeah. So when it then comes to creating invoices, which will not necessarily be required in the start of 2025, but nonetheless is, of course, similar of importance. It gets a little bit more complicated because now you're creating the invoice. On the first glimpse, this happens like it happened also up to today. You define a delivery date, let's say that was yesterday, a due date of the invoice, which might be tomorrow, and you add some items. In our case now, we'll add a booklet and we'll add a Honeybun flat rate. So then you can check all the information you have here and go on to create the invoice. What happens now is the invoice data is put into JSON format and sent as a JSON to the Mustang server. So this happens with this command. But what also happens is that you create a PDF to have a readable version, which is done via the already known print and save record, the Carbone functionalities we have, and is then combined into the merged format and given back to you. So in the end, then you could take this invoice and go the whole round, and or also like read it into your system, and this will then happen as the same as we have shown. All the information is available. So I think that's it from me at this point.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Simon and Frank, for the presentation. And we also have quite some questions which came in. And I think I'll start with the questions for Frank, which is regarding the multi-choice field. And the question is, will Ninox create commands for setting multi-choice field? And if yes, when? Or is this possible with this new functionality?
For setting, so assigning a value to a multiple choice field?
I think so, yes.
Interesting point. I think you can assign values to multiple choice fields, but it's not as straightforward as you might think. But yeah, I think we will pick it up and write a blog post about it. I think that's a good topic for some deep dive on multiple choice fields.
Perfect. Thank you. How do the next gen choice field behave if a chosen value changes?
So the field is actually the same. So all the functionality and behavior about both fields, yeah. So the dynamic as well as the multiple dynamic multiple choice field, they stay the same. So the only difference is that you can now use expressions to express what you want to have displayed as values. Yeah, so that means the chosen function, for example, will just return the same results, and it will utilize the IDs that you provide within your expression.
Perfect, thanks. If I request a value of one of these dynamic chosen values, which result do I receive? Is it only possible as text or also in other formats?
Yeah, so intrinsically, Ninox stores the ID of that value. Yeah, so that of course also brings one kind of responsibility for the author of such a function, that those IDs stay stable. Yeah, so you don't want to change the meaning of an ID over time. Nevertheless, so you can convert the value into a textual representation just using the text function. You can extract the color of a value. So if your script also provides color information or icon information, you can use the color and icon functions to get those values back. And of course, you can also just use the or retrieve the ID by using the number function. Yes, so number of your choice field will give you the the numeric ID.
Perfect. This question also popped up with the icons and the colors, which was already answered with this. And then the last question is regarding the dynamic choice field, if this is with the new function also optimized for iOS devices.
I'm not entirely sure what optimized for iOS means with regards to this question, but generally that will work also on iOS. Yeah, so it will behave the same on iOS. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Then coming to e-invoices, and the first question I'll pick up directly if the e-invoice is also available in public cloud. And yes, it will be available also in the public cloud, starting from the professional plan. So you will need, if you are in the starter plan today, upgrade for this function to the professional plan. But yes, it will be also available in public cloud. And then a question regarding the invoice function, if it's only valid for Germany or also for Europe. Maybe Simon, you can answer this up.
Yes, I think I can. The requirements, first of all, come from the German legislative, but it's more or less a question of which standard you choose. And we're like, as of right now, we are providing ZUGFeRD and Factor X, and wherever ZUGFeRD and Factor X is valid, the functionality within Ninox will be valid.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Then there is a service which is called E-invoicing validation service, in German E-Rechnungsvalidator service from Baden-Württemberg in Germany. Are we checking the e-invoices which are generated with those portals, or how do we ensure that the e-invoices which we do with Ninox are correct?
We do have a validation endpoint, but ultimately the validation will also depend on the actual implementation in a solution, because all the fields provided by the standard do have dependencies. And in most cases, a validation will fail because the dependencies of the fields are not set correctly. So, but we will do our best to ensure that everything we can do from our side will allow for valid e-invoices.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So then I think I have a question for Frank. If Ninox had a way to create, save, and manipulate global variables that could be used in such use cases as input to dynamic multiple choice fields, is this something which will be also possible in future, to have kind of like also the possibility from global variables, I think?
I mean, it's an interesting topic. Nevertheless, since we are not having an explicit feature for global variables, we do have an implicit feature for that. Yeah, so there's two ways to achieve that. So either you want to store data only in the current session of the user, so basically in the browser window. So one way to, or one technique to achieve that is to use a page. And on that page, you can put a field which, according to the type of information you want to store, like a text field or a number field, and you set that field to be stored in the browser as a global variable in the browser. So then you can access that, you can assign values to it, or you can read values from it with the record function. Yeah, so you basically say record page, and the ID will be always 1. Since you know that, there will be also no runtime overhead, and then you use dot my variable name, or however you call the field. So this will act as something that's only present in the browser window, and you can use the very same technique just by setting the field option to be stored on the server, and then you have something like a very global variable, yeah, something that is accessible by the server, by all other users, and so on. So with those techniques, I think a lot of use cases are actually easy to cover.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Frank. Then back to you, Simon. What is the current time schedule when the e-invoicing module will be available for everyone?
So I think we have to differentiate it a little bit, because module might be misleading. We'll provide a template, and due to the nature of this topic, this will not be like really a module. You can use it out of the box in some cases, but in most cases you will have to adapt the functionality to the already existing solution you have. So, but for the template, this will be the beginning of December.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Simon. So I don't see any more questions in the chat or in the F&A section. So I think all of the questions are answered. If there are coming up any further questions, you can reach always out to support@ninox.com, and we will answer them. And I think one question is open, Frank. When will 3.14 be available?
Before 1st of December. So we are heading for the second half of November. Yeah, so somewhere mid of November, week later, around it.
Perfect. And you will receive the information when it's available via the newsletter and the forum. So then you'll get the information about it. And yeah, really looking forward. Thank you for the presentations, Simon and Frank. And Frank, I think we see each other here in 3 months. And Simon maybe for an update also on the e-invoicing topic some months ago.
Very
Thank
cool.
you. Have a nice day.
Thanks for having me.
Up to where you are.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ninox.